Picture a world where we all get the chance to overcome the challenges ahead. A world where every child can gain the tools and training to thrive. A world with equal access to education, healthcare, and opportunities. By investing in people, we're equipping generations for today and tomorrow. Zimbabwe, providing access to information and communication technologies to hundreds of students in rural areas. Uganda, doubling the number of beds and tripling maternity admissions at 2 rural hospitals. And providing microfinance for SMEs across India, Cambodia, Georgia and Bolivia.
Thank you very much, Liberato, and a warm welcome, good afternoon, Your Excellencies, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, and of course distinguished speakers, to our third panel about unleashing the power of human potential. And I would like to thank in particular His Excellency Dr. Al-Hamid Al-Khalifa, the President of the OPEC Fund, for inviting me to moderate this panel again this year, and of course also congratulate to a fantastic forum, Your Excellency. When we speak about the power of human potential, we understand that investing in human capital is both a moral imperative, but also a strategic necessity. And when I think about my work at Oxford or at Offenburg as a professor, I see that empowering individuals, but of course also communities, with equal access to education is really the key for prosperity, for inclusive growth. But as we know, in your country, in your institution, but globally, there are a lot of challenges, and that's what we want to discuss in our panel. But we also want to focus, of course, on the solutions, on the opportunities regarding human potential. If you allow me to kick off with the Deputy Minister of Finance, His Excellency from Armenia, Eduard. When we think about your country, I mean, I have been in Armenia like 10 or 15 times. Armenia is a great country with a lot of opportunities, with very smart people, great universities, but also it's a challenging environment. Geopolitical tensions, you're a small landlocked economy, a huge diaspora. So, Your Excellency, if I can ask you first, if we think about Armenia, what are the most pressing human capital issues in your country?
Thank you. First of all, I'm honored to be in this panel, and this is symbolic because we have a presence of 2 officials from Finance Ministry, which means that the role of the fiscal policy is key in unblocking the human potential. So on fiscal policy and the promotion of the human capital through the fiscal policy is not just spending money, it's just investments in the future of the societies, and it yields very important results for the well-being of the future of each country, and it builds the productive powers of each society in each country. And I would like to speak from this perspective. First of all, we have a big achievements in Armenia, and if you look at the two important indices, the UN's Human Development Index and also the World Bank's Human Capital Index, in both, Armenia is rated among high-rated countries. And in the Human Capital Index, we have above average among the upper middle income countries. But is this enough? I think no, because we need to do more with the fiscal policies, and I would like to bring to your attention 5 big challenges that we are facing. So the first one is better orientation on the human capital. From this perspective, we were able to boost our expenditures in education and health, by 1 percentage point during recent years, and we are planning to boost another 1 percentage point each during upcoming years, because this spending is low. So the level effect is very important, and it is the first challenge. So the second one is the environment where the human capital is being developed, especially the necessary infrastructure in the education and health. And here we have started a large-scale renovation, rebuilding and building of schools and kindergartens, also the hospitals. We have launched a groundbreaking project, Academic City, where we want to clusterize, merge the universities in sectors. And this really has a result because during recent years we boosted our capital expenditures, and it boosts the potential of our economy. The first challenge is about boosting the quality of education and the health systems. And if you look at our labor productivity, is still relatively low. And here we need to invest more in the education and health. And there is a big gap between skills of the labor and also the labor market demand. And here we concentrate on renovating and on upgrading the financing system of the education. Specifically, we work hard on the attestation of the teachers. We work hard on the competitive scholarships. We created high-tech labs in the schools. We launched a project of Generation AI, and we spoke about this today. In the health, we are trying to consolidate the resources under the one big reform and try to bring the society to an access to the broader health system services. And we are trying to introduce the universal health insurance system. The other challenge is the better job creation. We had a big improvement here during recent 10 years. If you look at the trends, we improved unemployment rates 10 percentage points, but there is room to improve more. We have a better job creation during recent 4 or 5 years, and a better concentration on some new sectors, especially the IT is becoming a driver of the economic growth. But we have launched a big employment strategy and trying to innovate how we approach the employment policies in Armenia, trying to bring both labor demand and labor supply together, creating on the one hand industrial zones and economic zones, but on the other hand also do the active labor market policies to promote it. And the last that I would like to speak about, and maybe one more, so we are launching a big reform project for the IT sector, where we concentrate on hiring the high-quality people in the IT sector with tax incentives, and also to do some fiscal packages for the R&D. And the last thing, is about the last challenge is about the refugees. You know that last year we had a big influx of the refugees from Nagorno-Karabakh as a result of military aggression of Azerbaijan, and it is around 4% of our population. And this 4%, we need to integrate this 4% in our population.
And we focus, I think, on the solutions as well in the second round. Thank you very much, Eduard. I think that's quite impressive to see and to hear what the challenges are. And Patricia, if I can ask the CEO of the Uganda Development Bank, I mean, we heard from Eduard the challenges of a country. Could we focus a bit on, I mean, the challenges institutionally regarding development banks? Can we just listen how you try to invest in human capital in Uganda, or what is the general approach regarding development finance institutions?
Okay, thank you. I think being a development bank, what is important is to identify what the specific priorities are. And of course, you have to appreciate what the challenges are, because then what we try to do is to provide solutions to specific challenges. So it's important to understand what the macro level issues are, and also what is the role of government, and then what remains as opportunities for development banks. The issues are broad. For example, when it comes to education or human capital quality, countries have specific challenges. In Uganda, we probably have issues of mindset change. Such issues may not be a problem For some economies, there are issues around the curriculum, what should it look like to align with the specific skills that are required for the 21st century economy, what role is government doing, and then what are opportunities for development banks. So that is the approach that we take as a development bank. So after identifying those priorities, then we have to mainstream in our specific strategies. And what I've said is just important because I recall one time we had a conversation with our president, and when we talk about what we think we should be doing in human capital education specifically, was like, no, we are going to get our own resources as government to do this. This is where you should focus. I think that is very important because then there is a gap in terms of what is it that we can do as a development bank, especially to support the private sector that is also complementing what government is doing. In Uganda, for example, 34% of educational institutions are private sector led, and the private sector needs support to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Patricia. I think that's very useful to understand what the particular challenges are for institutions or for countries. Laura, when we look a bit at the broader picture in your role as CEO of a very important global organization, but also thinking about your background being the CEO, formerly the CEO of the Italian Development Agency. So when we think about challenges transform the educational sector in developing countries, would you say that what you heard from Armenia and Uganda is a global challenge that we have to think about, like what are the modern curricula of the 21st century? How can we secure funding? How can we think about this private public collaboration Patricia was speaking about?
Thank you. Well, first, I would just like to give a couple of numbers just to give concretely a sense of the crisis. Today, there are over 250 million children out of school, but worse number maybe, of the children that are in school in low-income country, 7 out of 10 by the end of grade 4 can still not read or write a sentence. This means not only that we have to capture those 250 million and bring them back to the classroom, but also that all the resources that we are investing, the countries are investing in education at the moment, they are really not yielding the results that they would want. So what do we need to do? We need to bring education closer to the needs of the labor market. Ultimately, education is a wonderful thing per se because it enriches every one of us, but the purpose of education is to make sure that each and every one of us grows those skills that will help us at best to contribute to the growth and the development of the society where we are living. To be able to do that, we need to make sure that there is a process of transition from school into jobs that actually makes sense, and so that the education system produces those skills that then the labor market wants to hire. And at the moment, the two sides of the equation, they are not talking with one another. So we have one sector that designs curriculum that are in most cases, unfortunately, obsolete, and another sector that tells us, why do I have to, I don't know, interview 9 engineers before I find the one that ultimately I want to hire? It shouldn't be like this. So I think that one of the things that we are trying to do as an organization is to foster this collaboration and this dialogue so that the inputs from those who are the end users of the products of the education sector, end up being upstream in the design of the curriculum. The other thing is obviously financing. And I think that, education is clearly a responsibility of the public sector, but it's very obvious by now that the needs are so enormous that the public sector on its own just doesn't have the carrying capacity. And so we are trying to foster partnership on that as well.
Thank you, Laura. I think that's a very powerful message you're delivering. And Your Excellency, the Minister of Finance from Tajikistan, that might be the perfect question for you as well. Because Tajikistan, you declared a year of human capital. And if you listen to Laura, bringing the curriculum closer to the labor market needs and, of course, having sufficient financing, which is, of course, the role of a Ministry of Finance. Why was that needed, that you declared this year of human capital? Why is the power of human potential such a priority for your country? What did it entail?
Thank you. Thank you so much for the question. As was mentioned by my colleague from Armenia, that doing the financing or investing for the maybe some infrastructure as a school, healthcare, hospitals, and everything. We're doing investment on, let's say, on human capital, for the future. But with a collaboration with the World Bank and other partners for development, we provide the first international forum for human capital development in Dushanbe in Tajikistan. This event brought together more than 450 delegates and experts from the more than 35 countries from the region and development partners for the first time to share the expertise, best practice, and innovative solution to address our common challenges. I said that it's very important for Tajikistan because having 10 million population, more than, population is very young, under the 24 years, and it is our potential to do more investment in human capital and also to use this potential for the future of the country. Through this forum, we aim to create a platform for dialogue and cooperation on issues such as education, skills development, and innovation, ultimately seeking to strengthen our region's human capital and drive economic growth and development. At the forum, we also identify the key priorities to best practices for the human capital development, focusing on the 6 critical areas. Mm-hmm. Firstly, we recognize the importance of the investing in early childhood development, acknowledging that the early years shape the person's life trajectory. Secondly, we emphasize the needs for the, quality education for everyone, ensuring the equal access to the elimination of inequalities. Thirdly, we emphasize the importance of the lifelong learning and skills development to adapt to the evolving global economy. Fourthly, we highlighted the significance of the health and well-being, including accessible and high-quality healthcare services. Fifthly, we discussed the role of the social protection of the supporting vulnerable populations. Finally, we underscored the importance of the partnership and collaboration among the government, civil society, the private sector, and international organizations to drive human capital development. And we know that making investment for the human capital, we are investing for the future of our country and our neighbor's country.
Thank you very much for the impressive summary of what the achievements, of course, will be, hopefully, and what the plans are. Eduard, you were very strategic as well in your first answer, and we heard from Faiziddin that cooperation is key, and I think that's true, of course, for Armenia as well. Can I ask you very briefly how Armenia, in cooperation with other institutions, with the OPEC Fund, with other MDBs, with donors, etc., how can you move on regarding the agenda you just described? How important is that collaboration for your country?
As there is a big financing gap on solving these challenges, we really need the support of the IFIs. And we are cooperating in all areas that I mentioned. That is why I mentioned what are the big challenges that we need to cooperate with the IFIs. So the first, there are a couple of tools which are being used to boost the human capital. And here the role of the fiscal policy, again, plays a key role. So the first one, the budget supports. Budget support, grants, loans. So within that, we usually envisage big reform projects related to the human capital. One of them was recently with the World Bank, and the OPEC fund was co-financing also this project, where we designed a long-term education strategy and mobilized money and TA resources to boost the potential within the institutions. But there are more result-oriented tools. For example, the PIF program for results or result-based tools. Here, for example, with the World Bank and the ADB, we are working on the universal health insurance reform, where we focus the World Bank on the capacity building and the reforms, and focus with the ADB on the infrastructure. We have also the cooperation with the EBRD and the World Bank and the ADB on school building, for example, which relates to the infrastructure gap that I was mentioning. But I feel there is a big gap that IFIs need more concentration on the human capital, because sometimes we speak about the infrastructure gap, infrastructure financing, climate issues, other global issues, but we do not invest as much in the human capital as we do in other global challenges.
Yeah, correct.
And without that, we cannot really solve these challenges.
Yeah.
And there is room for improvement, and there is room for improvement also in the terms of the financing in human capital projects.
That's a very powerful message.
Given the high interest rate environment that we have now, especially.
Yeah, very true. Thank you for the powerful message. And I think the sources of financing you highlighted are key. Patricia, if I can change the perspective and think not only about the sources of your funding or of other fundings, but really how you invest in human capital. Could you share with us maybe one example of a successful tool, how you invest in human capital? For example, to tackle gender inequality in Uganda.
All right, thank you. So, in all the sectors that we finance, including human capital, there are what we call cross-cutting issues or cross-cutting priorities. One of them is SMEs. So, in this sector, you're going to find SMEs. In these sectors, you're going to find gender-related issues like women, youth, for example. So what we have done is identify or put in place specific innovative products around how we support SMEs. And then for gender, similar thing around women, but how we structure this is, again, understanding what are the critical challenges, what are the problems, and therefore our solution should really be addressing those problems. For SMEs, we are going to find women. We have a robust business accelerator incubation program. So what we intend to do under this program is address all the demand-side related issues around access to finance. Because it's not just enough to say we are providing money, money is here, but you have to de-risk SMEs. And again, we thought that we're not going to leave this to anyone, but we have to do it and kind of provide a holistic solution. So demand-side, issues around readiness, preparation, so they can be able to manage these projects well. And then we provide financial solutions that are also tailored to specifically meet the SME needs. And there is a lot of host of issues around the value proposition that we offer for that. And then when it comes specifically to women, again, it started from understanding what are their specific challenges in our context, in the context of Uganda, and what are the opportunities. So we partner with, we have an association, it's a National Women Association, Uganda Women Entrepreneurs, consists of 2.5 million women currently, enterprises. And so we work with them to kind of provide, again, specific solutions for women. So when you come into the bank and you are a woman entrepreneur, there is a criteria that we shall use or we use, and then we are able to offer financial support specifically for that segment, which would be different from what we offer to anybody else.
Thank you, Patricia. I think that's very concise. I mean, strategic direction, targeted approach, as you mentioned, innovative, more creative ways to do that. And you said as well, it's a combination of different instruments. It's not about pure financing only. It's about incubation. It's about de-risking. I think that's excellent, Laura. If we can look at the global perspective you cover and you're able to share with us. So, does that match your experience? What strategies can be employed from your point of view to secure more, to support better financing for education?
So let me start with saying something that, you know, it's obvious, I think, but maybe not, and this is why sometimes I have to repeat. All the things that we have been discussing today, building infrastructure, the green transition, the stronger institutions, only happen if people can make them happen. And people can only make these things happen if they have the right skills. So what derives from this is that education is not just a matter for the education sector, it's a matter for the whole economy, it's a matter for the entire society. And therefore, supporting it, both in terms of defining how it has to be structured and it has to be financed, is a matter of everybody. This is why I very much enjoy bringing to the education sector unusual actor. I'm very proud of the partnership that we have with the OPEC fund and the other member of the ACG in financing the Smart Ed program. That brings unconventional, funders to a sector that is critical for all the other things that they want to achieve in other sectors. This is why I'm so keen in making the private sector aware that they cannot just see themselves as the end users of skills. They have to contribute to being producers of these skills. And that requires a very different role. This is why
and how do you do that? I mean, how can you convince the private sector to really focus on this and this power of partnerships as well?
I think that the private sector understands that. The private sector has difficulties engaging in the modality of the public sector because the timing are different, the decision-making process is different, and by the time that the private sector has decided how to move on a PPP project, the private sector is already 3 continents away because they just cannot wait that amount of time. So I think that the pressure is on us to make sure that we capture this willingness and shorten and make our business model more user-friendly for the private sector. And of course, I mean, on the private sector is entering in a different perspective that basically what matters is not necessarily just profit, but impact. And that profit and impact can actually be connected if you do things in a different way.
Thank you, Laura. And Faiziddin, I mean, I don't know if this is an inspiration for you, because my final question is about the financing constraints, the fiscal constraints in your country, of course. I mean, what is the concrete plan to overcome these constraints? And is maybe something you hear today a potential solution as well for Tajikistan?
Thank you so much. I said about the country, about our potential. Tajikistan is a Central Asian country with a huge potential as a hydro, and let's say I said about the generation, and you know that the more than 1 million people is out of the country as a migrant, but having many more than 88 under implementation projects, we create new jobs and we do many reforms in all sectors of our economy. And one of the big potential which we discussed with our colleagues here, it's our hydro potential. We have one of the biggest projects as Ragun project, HPP, which it is not only a project for Tajikistan, a mega project for the, let's say, producing green energy for the region. In one time to solve many, let's say, it's maybe not problem, but it is one policy with the global policy for the climate change to solve the deficit for energy and also for access for the drinking water, for the irrigation and the food security, which is very, very important for now. And I want to say a few words about education, health, what was under the, let's say, COVID situation in the region. We saw, as in Armenia, a very big gap on financing of, let's say, on healthcare, and we provide many projects by financing all our partners for development, including the OPEC fund, the Islamic Bank, World Bank, and others. And starting now, we started with the World Bank, very mega project for the health sector, which names as a Milati Solim. It is a health nation, which included many reforms which fully changed the structure which we had from starting from the Soviet time. And we believe that such financing will, let's say, improve the situation and also will help for the social and economic development of Tajikistan. I said that not only want this project, we have another road infrastructure, which also the goal is to do more comfortable cooperation between the countries in the region, and also it make possibility to use some road project to connect with our neighbors countries, China. It is also not only one road, it's, let's say, economic corridor for the countries in the region, but also some of this project which connected us with a transmission line for our neighbors country. We know that some deficits in others country. Electricity is very important for the growth of economy. Having the building or infrastructure, not having the electricity or lights in the building, I think it's more problem than others. But I said that the many projects which also with the big gaps we have in the country, and also a special program for the investing, which included 100 projects, which is very important for Tajikistan, and also many of them has the regional, let's say, impact.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that. And I think we could speak for hours on the topic. Such an important, such a critical issue. Unfortunately, as we know, time flies. Unleashing the power of human potential, I mean, that's what we wanted to discuss. I really want to thank you for a lot of food for thought. I think our audience will agree with that we had a lot of fresh ideas, different approaches, and to understand how important it is to find a combination between these strategic approaches, the innovative approaches, the results-oriented approaches, and at the end bringing different sources of financing together between national governments, the private sector, and of course the multilateral in development banks and agencies such as the OPEC Fund. So I would like to thank Your Excellency Eduard, the Deputy Minister of Finance from Armenia, also Your Excellency Minister of Finance from Tajikistan, Laura Frigenti from Global Partnership for Education, and of course, last but not least, the CEO of UDB, Patricia. Thank you so much for an amazing panel. And back to you, Moderator.